Sure, you can go on Ozempic as one of the tools, but it can't be the only tool, or you're not going to lose the amount of weight that you need to and the time frame that you need to lose it for. So we worked on nutrition in conjunction with the Ozempic being different types of tools in their toolbox. And that's really my mentality with it all, is that we construct a toolbox for ourselves that is personalized to what we need. And is a GLP-1 going to be part of the toolbox? That's totally fine. There's no shame in that, but it can't be the only tool. Hi, everyone. It's Megan Ramos here with another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. Today, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Dr. Terri Lance, and we're going to dive into the hot topic today of GLP-1s and fasting. Before we get started, Terri, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to talking about this. And I know entering into this hotbed of a topic seems a little scary, but I think it's really one that we can help normalize for people and shed some light on some thought processes that they may want to go through. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, GLP-1s have become a very hot topic. Recently, or more recently, we had the Super Bowl here in the United States, and I felt like most of the commercials were focused on GLP-1s, most of these fancy commercials that even if people aren't into football or the music or anything else, they want to tune in and watch the commercials. Even as a Canadian, when we lived in Canada, we were all about the commercials. We were so interested. They're usually fun, but this year they were really focused on weight loss, weight loss, weight loss, and GLP-1s being the key ticket. And I know when I returned to our online, like quote unquote, clinic on the Monday after the Super Bowl, a lot of people had questions. They're feeling overwhelmed, pressured. Their healthcare providers have been talking to them about GLP-1s for a long time. And, we acknowledge like weight loss and lifestyle changes aren't easy. They're not the easiest thing to do. So it's just been a real hot topic at the fasting method lately. What are our perspective on GLP-1s, and can people who are taking them fast? Do they need to worry about additional side effects if they're fasting while on GLP-1s? And then, of course, Terri, there's the stuff with mindset. Like if we are going to be working towards a healthy lifestyle, regardless of what tools you're using to get there, you have to work on mindset. And there's a whole category of that under the GLP-1 umbrella. So I'm really glad we can talk about it today.
Before we get started into all of those details, Megan, I wonder if it would be helpful if we even went through some of the names and different reasons why someone's doctor may have talked to them about one of the medications versus another one, just so that we're all in the same playing field as we discuss these. Several of the big names that a lot of people are talking about, I have clients that come back and say, my doctor wants me to start on this medication and whatnot. Just thought it would be helpful. Ozempic and Wegovy. Now, they are a very similar medication, not exactly, but they do have the same active ingredient, and that is semaglutide. Wegovy is for long-term weight management. That's how doctors prescribe that one. And Ozempic is for type 2 diabetes. So as you're going to see in just another one that I'm going to talk about in a second here, it's really a very similar medication with two different names. One that is prescribed for weight loss and one that is prescribed for type 2 diabetes. The other set that are talked about a lot these days, a little bit newer versions, that would be tirzepatide is the actual medication or the active ingredient, and you hear that being talked about as Mounjaro. That is the one that is used to help treat type 2 diabetes, and the other form of that is called Zepbound, and that one is the one that is prescribed for weight loss. So again, we see the same active ingredient prescribed, little bit different dosing in these, sometimes with different factors with them, but those are the four more common ones that people are talking about often these days.
The original one was Victoza. Victoza came out, oh geez, years ago. I mean, it was the first one we ever started prescribing in the clinic. So it was a good 15 years ago that it was that available. that it was in Canada, that it was covered by benefits by everybody for the right patient, but it was strictly for type 2 diabetes. It was semaglutide, and it was the one that you take every single day. It was the OG shot. When a lot of patients took it every day, not only did it help with their blood glucose as promised, since it was a diabetic agent, but people started to notice that, hey, this is giving appetite suppressing benefits. Doctors started to notice that their patients who were taking it as a diabetic agent were also experiencing this appetite suppression and that it was resulting in some weight loss. Patients were feeling good, and then that's how it all kind of caught on fire. More patients started wanting it, switching to it. In Canada at the time, you could only get it if you were diabetic because it was a diabetic medication. We started to get physicians who were a little bit creative. If someone was pre-diabetic, borderline diabetic, there started becoming some loopholes to get this medication prescribed or at least discounted because then it wouldn't be covered if you weren't a diabetic. This medication was really the one that spawned everything. So, in order to get it classified for weight loss purposes, well, first after Victoza, it was a daily thing, a daily injection. No one really wants to take a daily injection, right? So then Ozempic was the next big thing that was coming out where it was going to be the weekly shot. Just the weekly shot, making things a lot more convenient. Take it on Wednesdays, go away to the cottage for the weekend, not have to worry about your shot and a cold box and an ice pack to make it good for travel. So Ozempic was coming out, but then there was quick interest in weight loss. I mean, we have obesity as like one of the greatest epidemics in first world countries, especially here in the United States and then Canada too. It's a huge problem, and it's a problem that is plaguing people now, like almost from birth, it feels like. These medications are now being approved for kids in elementary school for weight loss purposes. So there's a lot of interest in trying to make weight loss, quote unquote, easy, but profitable at the same time. So this is where we started seeing some of the other medications that Terri, you just started to talk about coming out. Their chemistry was slightly different. Therefore, they could be legally marketed for weight loss and not just diabetes. Then they could get their own coverage and through all the bureaucratic loopholes. And now we've got like a whole collection of them that are available on the market. You don't hear so much about Victoza anymore, not in places like Canada and the United States. It's pretty much been outdated and replaced by Ozempic for diabetics anyways. It's a growing, booming class of medications, and they're now even stretching into the oral forms, which is something I'm getting asked a lot about lately. Is does the oral medication cause similar side effects as the injectable medication? Oral stuff, some of them are taken daily. So is that less potent than if we're just taking one larger bolus shot like a week? It's been really interesting to watch these evolve. And so many people think that they're brand new, but they're really not brand new. We have had Victoza. It's been around for a good, probably 20 years at this point in use in a clinical setting. So it's not new. Side effects are not new. Understanding how it works and how it impacts patients is also not new. It feels very new for the public, though, but it's not super new to healthcare providers.
So, Megan, one of the things I've noticed as the talk about the GLP-1s has increased over time, and more doctors are talking with their patients, and these are patients that work with us at TFM. I hear a lot of people feeling a little bit conflicted and sometimes not knowing, can I still do fasting while I'm taking a GLP-1, or is this dangerous for me? Or do I need to fast if I'm taking GLP-1s? Or should I even tell my coach that I'm taking a GLP-1? Because some people feel some shame thinking, I should have been able to make these changes with the other strategies. And I'm making a decision about the GLP-1 and I feel kind of conflicted about that. So I wondered if we could talk a little bit about how does GLP-1 use fit in the picture of people working on their health, working on weight loss, and doing it in a healthy way using fasting and nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the public perception of it is very black or white. especially for people who are in more of the functional or integrative space in terms of their health interests and wanting to do things more holistically. They do feel very conflicted about taking a pharmaceutical to help them with weight loss. And so it's something that, again, we end up in this black and white box. But I think very few things fit into an all or nothing black or white type of mentality. There's always a gray zone that we need to look at. And before we really do any further dive into this, I do want to share with people, and I shared this with Terri before we started recording this episode, is that my father was a very social person. He was a very social lawyer. And at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when everyone was under this infinite lockdown, and my dad, who is a social guy working in this hugely busy environment, paid to talk for a living. He had a secondary career as a guitar player in the evening times. It was really hard for him to be home alone, isolated. Like everything was on pause. There wasn't much going on. And he was seeking comfort in food. And his A1C had become really great and a lot of his biomarkers, but very quickly things started slipping in the wrong direction. And Jason called me one day and said, Megan, what do you want me to do? He's just like spiraling here because of everything that's going on. And I have a telehealth with him soon. But I'm looking at his labs and I would really like to give him something short term. And like, hopefully, we'll all be out of this mess soon and he can go back to his structured way of life where he was being really fulfilled and not falling into food. And I think so many people fell into the same mindset issues that my dad did. And I said to Jason, I'm like, well, like what's his A1C? Wasn't good. His fasting sugar wasn't good. I said, we'll give him Ozempic. I was like, just give it to him for a few months. And Jason, like, I agreed with him. Hopefully, in a few months, we'll be out of this and he can be back to his routine. But I do understand there was a scary time too. A lot of us had no idea what was going on or what the future held. So we were finding comfort emotionally in food as we had been taught and trained to do for most of our lives. And very recently, I had another family member, I won't disclose, but they sort of have a life-threatening health situation going on and very quickly needed to lose weight. And I said to them, when they asked, because their doctor wanted to put them on Ozempic, and I said, sure, you can go on Ozempic as one of the tools, but it can't be the only tool, or you're not going to lose the amount of weight that you need to in the time frame that you need to lose it for. So we worked on nutrition in conjunction with the Ozempic being different types of tools in their toolbox. And that's really my mentality with it all, is that we construct a toolbox for ourselves that is personalized to what we need. And is a GLP-1 going to be part of the toolbox? That's totally fine. There's no shame in that, but it can't be the only tool. And this is where we see a lot of the problems happening, and we can dive into those problems too. But it can absolutely be a tool in the toolbox, just like fasting can be, and low carb nutrition can be a tool in the toolbox. And then, at TFM, we help people, we guide them through some functional health issues too, like with detoxification and then like improving their body's ability to detoxify, lower inflammation, improve nutrient status. Like we do a little bit more sort of functional health coaching in certain aspects, as well as mindset coaching to help make this sustainable. So, we have a robust toolbox. The only tools, we don't just use fasting and nutrition at TFM to help people. We try to understand the person's system, mind, body all together and figure out a customized approach for them. And GLP-1s can be part of that. And I don't think there's any shame in it. And we really try to encourage that in our community meetings and our coaching meetings and to let us know. Medications, they all have side effects too, or potentially have side effects, right? So it is really important if you're working with a coach, especially on our team or anywhere, that you fully disclose what medications you might be taking, because that helps us help you more. By letting us know, it's not an invitation to shame because none of us look at it that way, but it's an invitation for us to understand what's going on in your body so we can help provide you with the best set of tools that you need and support you need with what you're using to get to where you want to be.
And I think our approach with everything that we do is working toward overall wellness and more optimal functioning physically. So, using fasting, using our nutritional choices, using our mindset, using mindfulness, meditation, sleep, movement or exercise, all of these things. And all of those things help with GLP-1, those that naturally our body makes, and also while taking the medication. And again, it's the same strategies that we work with everyone to develop at TFM. And so I think it's really clear in what you're saying, Megan, is that the approaches are not exclusive of one another. It's not, well, you either do this or you do this. Whether you use a GLP-1 medication or whether your body's using the GLP-1s that you make yourself, you need all of these other tools. So I love that you use that reference.
That's also important. Our goal at the fasting method is to help you become the healthiest version of you, to help give you as much control over your health and your future health outcomes as possible. And there is no golden ticket, and there's no one tool that does that on its own. And I think a lot of practitioners, a lot of advertising, and just a lot of people out there who might not be as health savvy as some of you who are listening to this podcast and aware of some of these additional tools like fasting and nutrition, really look at these GLP-1s kind of as the be all and the end all and the savior and the thing that's going to get them to where they need to be at the end of the day. If I'm being perfectly honest with our listeners, if I had a quarter for every time someone came into a consultation and said, I must be the only person on the planet this doesn't work for. If that was the case, we would be recording this in Hawaii on the beach with a beautiful rainbow in the background. But, it can't be the only tool. And a lot of these people, the path is this. Their doctor suggests the GLP-1. They start taking it. They're not doing anything else differently. They continue to take it. Nothing's happening. They go up on their dose and up on their dose and up on their dose. And now they're on the highest dose and they're really not feeling well. They're not really eating. They're not really fasting. They're not doing too well. And they end up at their wits' end and they end up in a consultation with us. There's just so much to unpack here. And we see this a lot. We see them at this point, there's muscle wasting going on. There's a lot of GI side effects going on, even if they have experienced weight loss. And so they're pretty miserable because they've lost some weight. They're not hitting their goals, but their quality of life has diminished. And these are not new side effects. They're not just, new things that people who seem contrary to GLP-1s are saying. Again, Victoza has been around for a couple decades. So these are not new side effects. What we do is when we get these individuals, we let them know that these medications are just meant to be a tool, and they can be a very effective tool if used with other very effective tools, like fasting, for example. Our goal with fasting, like when someone comes into a consultation and says, I want to fast to lose 80 pounds and to come off of maybe a blood pressure medication and maybe metformin. My goal is not to have them be lifelong fasters, therapeutically speaking. We set out to try to do as much as we can metabolically within the course of 6 to 12 months through therapeutic fasting. And sometimes, based on complexity, it might take longer than 12 months. But therapeutic fasting is meant to be a therapeutic intervention, not a lifelong intervention. People may fast therapeutically in the big picture periodically for disease prevention or for just sort of cellular maintenance here and there. But it's not showing up in fasting 3 times a week for the entire day for the rest of your life. It's just meant to be a tool that's used for a period of time. And that's like GLP-1s. They should be a tool that are used for weight loss for a period of time. And in between, whether it's fasting and GLP-1s or fasting or GLP-1s, you still need to work on the other lifestyle components. So fasting at the end of the day really helps fix us on a cellular level. That is the no-brainer. It's why it is the name of the fasting method. It is the pinnacle part of it. It does fix a lot of the problem. It does break the cycle of insulin resistance. It's what causes us to experience so much cellular healing. And then we eat in a certain way to help maintain that cellular healing so we can maintain good health beyond that without eating in problematic ways that cause the insulin resistance to redevelop. We work on our mindset and our relationship with food for very similar reasons. It's just as important as the foods we eat, our relationship, mindset, and habits around eating as well. So the eating part and the mindset part, I think, are the longer term things that we work on. Those are the things that we're committing to for life. Even the fasting part is what I'm trying to say is not meant to be forever. The GLP-1 part is not meant to be forever. They're tools eventually, we put back on the shelf. And if whatever reason in life we need to go back to them, we can. They're there. But they're tools that are meant to eventually come out of our toolbox. And usually it's the nutrition and the habits and mindset that become more of our regular parts of our routine on a long-term basis. So I think if you look at these as sort of four key central components for the majority of people that are coming in, the combination of them all is what gets us there. No one thing on its own gets us there. Can you outfast a bad diet? We tell people no all of the time. You can make some significant improvements in your health and your lifespan and health span with fasting, but you've got to work on the other stuff too. We've talked so much on this podcast. You just can't avoid eating because you have a bad mindset and habits around food. You also have to eat too. So we really try when we have these individuals, like, yes, GLP-1s is not a forever intervention, but if you find they help you, we want to try to help them work very synergistically with all of our other tools. And just like fasting, we don't want it to be a forever intervention for you. We want to help it heal you and then transition you to more maintenance, quote unquote, or transformation state. So with the GLP-1s, we see people coming in pretty rough shape, but they're not working on any of the other components. They're not working on cellular healing. They're not working on changing their habits or their mindset. And then they've gotten themselves so sick on these mega doses of medication. Something I've encouraged a lot of people to talk about too is like, well, if you can't fast, but you're not really eating and you can't eat foods that cause GLP-1 naturally to be produced. Like protein is like the biggest GLP-1 driver ever. But if you're too sick and too nauseous to eat protein, then you're just giving yourself an injection of something that you could eat a steak and really enjoy and feel good about and see a lot of GLP-1 production just from that. So to work with the provider that maybe less is more in terms of the medication. Like what's a medication dose that I can be on and feel good and choose whether or not I'm eating and choose what it is that I'm eating. So that's one of the first things we do when someone does come into a consultation and is feeling really rough and is not getting results. Let's try to see what the dose is. More isn't always more. Even like with a lot of the review on statin, we see like 5 milligrams be so much more preventative against a lot of things when they're prescribed appropriately versus the higher doses of it. So the minimal effective dose is really important in medicine. And that's a concept that seems to have just flown out the window. And it's easy to market to people that more is more. Pharmaceutical companies are really great at doing that. But less is more with a lot of these medications. So let's get them to a point where we can actually get you to work on your healthy lifestyle. Let's get you on a true fasting schedule. Let's heal you cellularly, metabolically. Let's get you eating the right foods. And instead of taking the max dose of a GLP-1, you take a lower mid-range dose, but you can eat the steak, you can eat the protein, you can be physically active because you feel good. We'll be making up all that GLP-1 production naturally without the side effects from being able to have a healthy lifestyle. That's what we teach you and that's what we work on. That's been our approach with it. And then if you do feel like the GLP-1 helps give you an edge to make these things possible, then sure, it's a tool that works for you. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. People always ask, like, we would prescribe it in 3-month increments in Toronto when someone felt like they needed that support. And at the time, we could only prescribe it to diabetics because those are the rules. But of course, the biggest benefit they were hoping to get was weight loss, although it was a very effective diabetic agent, Victoza, absolutely. But we want to reverse their diabetes in cases that can be reversed. So all this to say is you would prescribe it in these like 3-month increments just to kind of assess, how people were doing with all of their lifestyle tools. Just like I can't tell you if it's going to take 3, 6, or 13 months to reverse your insulin resistance. I can speculate, and then life also kind of happens on that. We just want this to be a shorter term intervention. So a lot of people say, well, I'll try it for 3 months or I'll try it for 6 months. And I think it's okay if it becomes 9 months or 12 months, as long as we're working on everything together and we are fixing that lifestyle. And then that way we can drop not just the meds, but the fasting, and then just focus on living a healthy lifestyle for the long term. So that's how we metabolically approach the use of GLP-1s. And then, of course, the big tool, all of this is working on the mindset and the habits with your food to have a positive and healthy relationship with how often you eat, what it is that you're eating, why you're choosing to eat in the first place. And that's really where a lot of the hard work should be done, because that's how you're going to transform in the long run.
Megan, I want to go back to what you were saying about the dose. And I think this is so important too, because some of my clients and people that I talk to, they find or they report at least that their doctor kind of says, over the next 4 months, we're going to increase your dose. We're going to start you at this dose, then we're going to move up the next month, up the next. Like that's how it's going to go for everyone. One size fits all versus let's start you on the lowest dose and see one, how you do. And if you're having effective impact, let's not take you up a dose. Let's not just get you on the 4 month to the maximum dose. And as you said, oftentimes people just kind of quickly get to a high dose and they talk in some ways like they're happy because their appetite is gone. And now they feel maybe for the first time in many, many years or forever that they don't have all this food noise. But it's not just they don't have food noise all the time, they are struggling to eat. They're struggling to feel well. That is not quality of life. So, starting at the low dose and staying at the low dose, talking with your clinician about how can we do this. The lowest dose that is effective is really important because of these other side effects. And if your plan is to ever come off the medication, you need to learn the behavioral things to change that relationship with food. While you're taking a medication like the GLP-1, it does tend to turn down some food noise for a lot of people. It does tend to turn down some cravings. So does fat fasting. But if you're only doing those behavior changes because the drug is making you do them, they're not really going to stick long term. And so being on a high dose that's killing your appetite and killing your food noise doesn't necessarily mean you're making active decisions to change your relationship with food. It reminds me a little bit of the medication became very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was a therapist at the time, and many of my clients were coming in, their doctors had put them in Zyban to stop smoking. Zyban was not really developed for lifetime use. It was a course of treatment, like 7 to 12 weeks or something, but it does some similar things. Turns down the dopamine response, turns down cravings. But if you want to actually get away from those issues long term, you're going to have to work on changes. You're going to have to go somewhere else during your break, during work, rather outside to smoke. Just like for many people at TFM, you're going to have to do something else when you get stressed out at your computer rather than going to the kitchen and grabbing a snack. So again, these things that are kind of created short term to help for weight loss aren't necessarily helping us develop different relationships with food, different thought processes, different decision making when it comes to restaurants or celebrations or alcohol or whatever. So, yes, I do have a number of clients who report it has felt very amazing to them to have some decreased food noise, but that won't carry them long term if they come off the medication and haven't also done the work.
This is going to sound pretty nutty, probably to everybody that listens to this podcast. But honestly, it's the same with fasting. You can't just fast 5 days a week in and out for the rest of your life because it's easy. You can just avoid eating. You set hard boundaries for yourself. Well, I'm just not going to eat. And then the weekend, something stressful happens, or there's a party and the foods are all crazy. That's not going to help you either in the long term. Avoiding eating is not going to help you either. Just always fasting is not going to help you either. Is why we've talked so much about importance of mastering time restricted eating on this podcast and in our community. We are trying to tone it down a bit, but we need to practice eating too. And so many people come in, they can fast, they can get results, but they need, I had a woman tell me the other day that she always needs to do a 5 day fast. It's the only way she gets any results because she hasn't worked on the eating stuff yet. It's too hard, it's too complicated. There's people around, there's all these things that come up. So it's just her preference to always do 5 day fasts and as often as she can to try to get results. That's not effective. It's not effective. No different than using just a GLP-1 all of the time and expecting that on its own without any lifestyle changes to fix your problem. I'm not trying to give GLP-1s grief here. And you all know I love fasting. This is like, I've based my whole life about it. It's saved my life. But it was a tool, and I had to put in the hard work. I had to figure out eating. I had to figure out my relationship with food. I had to figure out how to celebrate differently. I had to figure out how to deal with sad emotions and stress in other ways that served me better. And that's just the bottom line. We've got to put in the work. We need to work on the hard stuff. Nothing worthwhile comes easily in life. It's so cliche, but it is painfully true. And we have to put in the elbow grease. So fasting's a tool, GLP-1s are the tool. At higher doses, we do see a lot of GI issues. We see liver issues. We see thyroid issues. We see people just be so low grade unwell all of the time that they can't do healthy things. These medications are largely targeted to people going through hormonal changes in midlife too, because that's when a lot of the weight starts to creep on. Men become estrogen dominant midlife, women become estrogen dominant midlife due to hormonal fluctuations. That causes insulin resistance, that causes weight gain. We end up on these GLP-1s, and our bodies are already prone now to losing muscle and they're prone to losing bone mass. Then we get ourselves into such a state and we start to experience muscle loss and bone loss, and it just perpetuates other problems that make us super reliant on other medications in the healthcare system. So why not use it at a dose that gives you an edge, but still enables you to actually put in the elbow grease and do some of the other work and utilize some of the other tools like fasting and get to a really healthy place over the course of a year where you can really scale back your use of these tools or put some of them back in the cupboard just in case for later on down the road, but not have to use them all of the time.
Well, recently I've been doing some recordings with Dr. Fung about the Hunger Code book. And one of his little pet concepts to keep emphasizing is the negative impact of ultra processed foods on our hunger, why we're eating, why things are not working well with our weight loss, or why are we gaining. Last summer, one day I was sitting outside on a patio with a friend and overheard some guests a few tables over. They were talking pretty loudly. And they said, oh, these new medications, this Ozempic, this is just for people to eat whatever they want and not be responsible. And I was just fuming as I was listening to this, because if you care about your health, something like the GLP-1 has a very negative interaction with ultra processed food, just like if you're not taking it. So it's not a free ticket to just enjoy some things that you really like, and who cares about those healthy foods? Megan, you've mentioned a few times today muscle wasting. That's due to people not getting proper nutrition while taking this medication, right? And ultra processed foods. If I don't feel well enough to eat, like you said, that steak and some vegetables, I'm going to eat something that's just comforting to me, which will fall into a more problematic category. So I'm not changing my relationship with food for the better. I'm not giving my body the nutrients that it needs. It's not going to help me really achieve overall well-being, even if it means I've lost some weight. So I just think there's so much power in, if you are going to be taking a GLP-1, that you continue to work on all of these other tools that we've described.
And it can bring a lot of people great success. I mean, every medication out there isn't for everybody. Every approach out there isn't for everybody. But it's something that, if used sensibly, it can help you get to where you need to be with the proper tools that are actually going to help you heal and recover and stay healthy in the long term. Because it's not going to do all of that for you, unfortunately. It can be used responsibly, but I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're using it responsibly. You're connecting with teams or resources who understand that and who can help support you with that. Also, just make you feel comfortable and safe. At the fasting method, one of the things that's the most important to me is that people feel safe in our community and really understand that there's no one size fits all approach to anything. There's no right or wrong. We're each different individuals who need different approaches for various reasons. And yeah, there's bell curves, right? Where bulk of people are going to respond certainly to one protocol, but there are outliers. And we know we spend a lot of time talking about those too. So we want people out there who are listening to feel like you've got an advocate. This is not a black and white situation that has skill set and tools to help you navigate this as well. And Terri, you mentioned like this is the titration up to the max dosage protocol that everybody gets. And it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when it comes to GLP-1s or anything, really, like anything out there, pharmaceutical, because you don't know. You don't know what a person is going to actually need or respond best to until you try it and you get some real feedback. And you can look at the statistics and what the research says, but there's always going to be people who aren't dead center of that bell curve. We are seeing, I was telling Terri before this episode that in our neighborhood, and we live probably like, I think we're ranked the highest health in like the country, where I am in California, in the Bay Area, and they're prescribing this to 7 and 8 year olds now. So, that's whether you agree with that or not at this age, we still need to be improving the quality of foods in schools, the quality of foods available for these kids, educating parents about what is and isn't okay for kids to eat. I can't tell you the number of parents that just sit and watch my child because they just want to learn. They know that I do something in nutrition. I don't really squawk a lot about it, but they've gathered, I've done some things that are interesting. And I'm a person to be mindful of, and they just sit there and watch. And they're like, but he'll eat bone marrow and he'll eat chicken liver and he'll eat this stuff. And of course, he sees the fun, colorful packaging of some of the other stuff and wants to know what that is. He's 2.5. But he eats that way because we cook that way, and that's how he's learned. Quite frankly, it's pretty scary sending him to some of these schools and parties and stuff with all of the processed foods. But most people don't want to feed their kids garbage. They just don't have the resources and tools to know what it is that they should be feeding them. So, regardless of what we're going to do to help try to beat this obesity epidemic in our youth that we've got going on today, we do have to provide education. We do want to try to prevent this from being the problem in the first place. And we do that through food. We do that through our relationship with food and having a healthy one. My kid doesn't eat if he doesn't want to eat. He doesn't have to sit there and finish a plate of food. So we do a lot for like intuitive eating and a lot of things that we've just kind of fallen away from due to bad advice. And so I think we need to start giving out the right advice And I think most people agree about that when it comes to kids. So why shouldn't we agree about that when it comes to adults too? We deserve a chance at a life free from handcuffs of pharmaceuticals and doctor's appointments and just feeling awful all of the time. I want to be a grandma at a full moon party that my grandkids want to be hanging out at. I want to be the life of the party, and really enjoy. You don't work so hard for your whole lives to just want to be sick and kind of dwindle at the end. You want to live your life and enjoy it and everything you've worked hard for. It's the same common sense we would put into what we want to have happen for our children, we should want to have happen for us too. And I think that's really how we try to approach how we help people who are on whatever type of pharmaceutical it is with fasting and nutrition and lifestyle, just like people who come to us on insulin. All right, our goal is to be off of it one day when it's safe. But we've got to do the nutrition, we've got to do the fasting, we've got to do the mindset work, and we can get you there. I don't look at GLP-1s any differently than that. It is a tool that's being used for a short-term intervention, hopefully. And fasting will be a tool that's used for not a lifelong intervention, hopefully short-term in the big picture of things. And then we focus on the hard stuff that's going to keep people better in the long run. So regardless, GLP-1 or insulin or anything like that, our goal is to help educate you and make everything work in your favor and just help you get better and not need to rely on any of this stuff.
Mic drop. Megan, I love hearing all of that from you because I think the more we can make our overall well-being priority and not feel guilt or shame about taking care of ourselves in ways that work best for us is so important. So I look forward to getting to do another episode with you again soon. And until then, I hope everyone does well and focuses on their overall well-being as they make decisions about what tools and how they're going to apply those tools.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We'll talk to you again soon next week on another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. Bye for now.